The observation deck of the Galactic Council's research station hummed with nervous energy. Ambassador Vrextal of the Crithian Dominion stood rigid, his chitinous plates clicking in agitation as he watched the live feed from the colony world below. Beside him, Chief Xenobiologist Dr. Salaran's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a telltale sign of her species' deep anxiety. "This is madness," Vrextal hissed, his translator rendering his clicks into standard galactic. "The human settlement is directly in the migration path of the Velkera pack. Those creatures are apex predators. Class 7 threat rating. We should evacuate immediately." On the screen, the small human colony of New Haven glowed softly in the twilight of Kepler 442b. Among the prefabricated structures, one dwelling stood out, a modest cabin where Marin Okafor, the colony's xenobiologist, had made her home at the forest's edge. The council had warned her repeatedly about the location. She had politely ignored them every time. The human refused evacuation, Salaran reminded him, her voice trembling. "She claims the Velkera pose no threat to her research." "No threat?" Vrextal's mandibles clacked in disbelief. "The Velkera have evolved for 12 million years to be perfect killing machines. Their jaw strength can crush durasteel. Their pack tactics have taken down creatures twice the size of a human transport shuttle, and she thinks she can simply coexist with them." What the council observers didn't understand, what none of the galaxy's carefully evolved civilizations could comprehend, was that humanity had never needed to be the strongest or the fastest. They had become the dominant species of Earth through something far more dangerous: adaptability and an almost reckless capacity for empathy. Marin sat on her porch that evening, wrapped in her grandmother's quilt, the one that had traveled across light years to this new world. The fabric held memories of Earth, of autumn evenings and front porches that didn't overlook alien forests filled with creatures that Council xenobiologists insisted could kill her in seconds. She sipped her synthesized tea and watched the three moons rise over the canopy. The rustling came first, low, careful movements through the underbrush. Marin's hand didn't move toward the plasma rifle mounted by her door. Instead, she simply waited, her breathing calm and steady. The Velkera emerged into the clearing like liquid shadows. The adult was magnificent, standing nearly 3 meters at the shoulder, her midnight blue scales catching the moonlight like oil on water. 6 legs moved with predatory grace, and her elongated head featured row upon row of crystalline teeth that could tear through most known metals. According to the Council's database, this was the species' hunting posture. According to Marin's 6 months of careful observation, this was a mother looking for a safe place to rest. Behind the adult came 3 cubs, each the size of a large earth dog. Their scales hadn't fully hardened yet, showing patches of softer tissue that made them vulnerable to their world's other predators. They tumbled over each other with the clumsy enthusiasm of all young creatures, universal in their playful awkwardness. The mother Velkera's 6 eyes fixed on Marin. In the observation station above, alarms began to wail. Council security forces mobilized, preparing for emergency extraction of human remains. Betting pools formed among the research staff, not on whether Marin would survive, but on how quickly it would end. Marin slowly stood, holding her quilt loosely in her arms. She made herself neither large nor small, neither threatening nor prey-like. She simply existed in the space, offering neither challenge nor fear. The mother Velkera's nostrils flared, processing thousands of chemical signals that human technology still couldn't fully understand. Then Marin did something that made Vrextal's secondary heart stop entirely. She smiled. Not the aggressive baring of teeth that so many species misinterpreted. Not the nervous grimace of prey facing death. A genuine, warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. A human expression that conveyed safety, welcome, and understanding across the vast gulf of evolutionary distance. The mother Velkera's posture shifted. Her scales rippled with colors the Council's sensors had never recorded, deep indigos and soft silvers that their databases listed as unknown behavioral patterns. She lowered her massive head and gently nudged her cubs forward with her snout. The cubs approached cautiously, their scales not yet capable of the color changes that adult communication required. The smallest one, whom Marin would later name Tycho, reached her first. He sniffed at the quilt with obvious curiosity, his bioluminescent markings pulsing in patterns that researchers would spend decades trying to decode. Marin lowered the quilt to the porch floor and sat beside it. An invitation, not a command. Tycho looked back at his mother, who made a low thrumming sound that resonated in frequencies both above and below human hearing. Permission granted. Within minutes, all three cubs had burrowed into the quilt's folds, their scales clicking softly against each other as they settled. Tycho positioned himself closest to Marin, his small head resting against her leg. The warmth of his body, temperature significantly higher than human baseline, seeped through the fabric. His siblings piled on top of him, creating a nest of predatory younglings wrapped in a grandmother's handmade quilt from a world they would never see. The mother Velkera positioned herself at the porch's edge, her 6 eyes never leaving her offspring, but her body language radiating something the Council's best xenopsychologists would argue about for years. Trust? Gratitude? Perhaps something humans didn't have a word for. In the observation station, silence reigned. Dr. Salaran's 4 eyes had stopped blinking entirely. Ambassador Vrextal had ceased his agitated plate clicking. Neither could formulate words for what they were witnessing. "It's not possible," Vrextal finally whispered. "The Velkera are solitary except during mating season. They never allow other species near their young. They don't have social bonding behaviors with non-Velkera. Our evolutionary models, our models," Salaran interrupted softly, "didn't account for humans." Marin sat through the night, watching the 3 moons trace their paths across alien skies. The cubs' breathing synchronized into a soft, rhythmic pattern punctuated by occasional dream twitches that made their claws extend and retract. Tycho made small chirping sounds that reminded her of the birds from home, a similarity that couldn't possibly be coincidental, but rather spoke to the strange parallel paths evolution sometimes took across the galaxy. The mother Velkera never slept, but sometime in the deep hours of night, she moved closer. Close enough that Marin could have reached out and touched her scales. Close enough that mutual destruction would have been instantaneous if either had chosen violence. Neither did. As dawn broke over Kepler 442b, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet that Earth had never known, the cubs began to stir. Tycho was the last to wake, reluctant to leave the warmth of the quilt and the strange creature who had offered safety without demanding anything in return. The mother Velkera stood, her scales shifting through colors of farewell. She gathered her cubs with gentle nudges, and they followed her back into the forest. But Tycho paused at the clearing's edge, looking back at Marin with eyes that held something ancient and knowing. Marin waved, a simple gesture that meant nothing to Velkera evolutionary biology, but everything in the moment's context. Tycho's scales flickered with soft blue light before he disappeared into the undergrowth. In the observation station, Ambassador Vrextal sat heavily in his chair, his exoskeleton creaking. "I don't understand," he admitted. "By every metric we have, that encounter should have ended in violence. The human should be dead. The evolutionary imperatives, the territorial instincts, the threat assessment protocols, none of it makes sense." Dr. Salaran watched as Marin folded her quilt carefully, her movements slow and contemplative. "Perhaps," she suggested quietly, "that's why humans are so dangerous. Not because they're strong or fast or possess superior technology, but because they can look at the galaxy's most deadly predator and see only a mother seeking shelter for her young. They can offer kindness where every survival instinct screams for violence. They can build bridges where we see only chasms." She paused, all 4 eyes reflecting the morning light from the world below. "They can smile at death and make it choose life instead." The report that reached the Galactic Council later that day would be classified and studied for generations. It would fundamentally alter their understanding of human psychology and change first contact protocols across 100 worlds. But none of those future implications mattered to Marin as she prepared her morning tea, the quilt still warm from small bodies that had trusted her enough to sleep. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or warriors, but as the species that could see past fear to the universal truths that connected all living things. The galaxy was vast and strange and filled with wonders beyond counting. And sometimes, those wonders just needed a warm place to sleep until morning.